The announcement follows the completion of value for money negotiations. It is part of the government's announcement earlier of the 8 other preferred bidders on the 18th of March 2021. The 3 additional preferred bidder projects will add a total of 150 megawatts to the national power grid, bringing the total megawatts procured under the RMI PPPP to 1,995.76 megawatts. These projects will be required to achieve financial close by the end of September 2021. The RMI PPPP bid window was released to the market in August 2020. This follows the promulgation of the ministerial determination of 2,000 megawatts with concurrence from NERSA. The main objective of the bid window is to meet the supply gap indicated in the Integrated Resource Plan of 2019. It also aimed at reducing the extensive utilization of expensive diesel-based peaking electrical generators in the medium to long term. Joining us now to talk more about the significance of this process and how it's meant to benefit the country going forward is the Chief Executive of H1 Holdings, Reyburn Hendricks. Mr. Hendricks, a very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Indeed, it is an absolute pleasure having you join us this evening, Mr. Hendricks. I guess it is the big question on everybody's minds. How will this benefit South Africans in the medium to long term?
Well, there's a number of kind of benefits for South Africans. It's common cause that the lack of energy availability has a deeply negative effect on economic activity for a number of reasons. The economy slows down during load shedding, business decisions are difficult to make with this uncertainty, and consumers and businesses incur real costs during load shedding. So what these 3 projects, as well as the entire RMIPP program does, is it helps reduce the energy gap and increases the likelihood of energy availability, and to that extent will help reduce load shedding going into the future.
As this is the brainchild of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, so what's your understanding, perhaps your analysis and observation of the government's commitment to the IPP procurement program?
Based on the evidence, the government has a lot of commitment to this program. The Integrated Resource Plan, which is a long-term energy plan for the country, calls for about 20,000 megawatts of renewable energy over the next 10 years. That you can compare to the existing peak demand of about 34,200 megawatts, which was the peak demand for South Africa last year. So based on that, there's a lot of commitment by the government to using renewables and possibly most of that coming from private players going into the future.
Let's talk about the various sources that H1 Holdings will tap into, to provide alternative energy.
The projects that we're speaking about, there are 3 projects called Canard 1, 2, and 3. What they're designed to do is provide 150 megawatts of dispatchable power. Dispatchable meaning that when Eskom calls for it, that it can be delivered into the grid over a window of 5 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Where that power is coming from, it's 540 megawatts of solar PV and 1,100 megawatts from battery storage. We believe that this is arguably the largest solar battery hybrid installation in the world when it will be completed.
Will this be the panacea for the continuous problems facing, South Africa's energy sector, in particular the provision of electricity, or will it simply mitigate the impact of load shedding?
I don't think our project is the panacea for the problem that we're having, but I think we are part of the solution. As I mentioned, when you do the numbers, this set of 3 projects will be about 0.43% of total peak demand. The entire RMIPP window will be about 5.8%. So these are projects by itself are not a panacea, but what it what it does mean is that the real answer is that South Africa needs a lot more of these kind of projects to make a real difference to energy availability. As I mentioned, the government's program is to have a lot more of these projects going forward. It's my view that the international and local private players will be ready to respond when called to do so. And the sooner this is done, the better.
So who carries the risk in relation to the success of the project? Is it the bidders or the consumers themselves?
The risk for these projects are all borne by the bidders and the shareholders. The way that these are done, the shareholders raise kind of funding from the shareholders through the equity finance and from the debt markets through the provision of kind of debt funding. And so the risks and the rewards are really all for the benefit of the shareholders. Should the project not connect on time or not deliver the correct amount of power, it's the shareholders or the bidders who bear those risks. The consumers don't bear those risks. They will get Eskom will pay the bid price for these projects, and they will not incur any downside, nor will they incur the capex that's needed to build and operate these projects.
Okay, so are you at liberty to give us the timelines for the full implementation of this project? Because I do understand that there's still power purchase agreements that need to be signed to determine the validity of the various licenses that have to be abided by.
Correct. So the projects that we're talking about have until the end of September to reach our financial close. Our financial close means that all the contracts have been signed and that our projects are ready for construction. And the intention is to have these projects connected to the grid by the end of next year. So that's the timelines. In particular, for these projects, all the environmental permitting has been done, and we're highly confident that we'll be able to meet all those deadlines which I've just mentioned.
All right, Mr. Hendricks, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, that was Reyburn Hendricks, the CEO of H1 Holdings, speaking to us live via Zoom.